Hello? Hello? I'm gonna check the footage to see if that moved at all. Doesn't look like it. The way this is closed out makes me think there's maybe a gasket there. I've got a little drain here with a oil leaking out of it. A wet clutch maybe? I may have to read up on these tonight. Alright, I've got the motor pulled loose. I just loosened the nuts up, pulled the adjuster back. I'm going to slack it off and try to pop those belts off of there just to make sure the motor's working and wants to start up. Then we can go from there. I kind of have a feeling though, if I need to get into where the clutch is, I'll have to pull that flywheel, but it looks, I believe it's the easy kind. It's just got a big plate over it. And then we'll see. We'll get that popped off of there if we have to. Why did it start backwards and then kick off going the other way? Is that what that looked like to you? I'm going to start it again. Hang on. Oh, that's right. I don't have to change anything. That's right. It's possible that the belts were just stuck in the pulley on the motor. Before we go too far, we'll try again here. There's a bull gear stuck somewhere in there. Revolution. There's big gear in there. It might have been stuck where it trips all the time. It shouldn't be engaged, but it's entirely possible that it's tripped and it is engaged. Doesn't feel like it. I don't know if you can see this thing moving over here, but the clutch is engaged and it must be stuck because it's trying to start up and cycle the machine. It was pulling through, which is a good sign. So I think what I'll do is just kind of put some spray lube on everything overnight and not get too excited about trying to get it going. I might try one more time, but I'll just spray it up. I'll shoot a little better video of what's happening here. Watch that head right there. And so when this fires up, that'll just start going, it'll go down and then up and then down and then up. On an eccentric from the bull gear running in there. Let's see what happens. All right, that was getting a little hot there. Okay, so I don't know what time is it, 7, almost 8. Sometimes I get a little relentless on this stuff. I just kind of work my way around it, greasing and oiling, and lubing stuff up and letting stuff soak in. And so I got the motor to spin up now, and the clutch is locked up right now. So ideally, you can see the punching right now, and it's doing the same thing at the other end. The other blade back there will be going too. So I can't get this linkage worked out down here for the foot pedal. Those are loose. That side's loose for the shear, but not for the punch. And so I need to get it to disengage. I'm just letting it run a little bit right now to work some lube through the system. It's nice and quiet. It's not making a lot of noise. It just kind of sits there. I'll just put you over next to it. You can hear that gear rolling around in there. That's about all it does. So I'll work on that in the morning. I'm not sure what I got to tear apart to get that to disengage, but I'll read about it tonight and see what happens. Anyway, let's shut her down. Okay, back at it. Good morning on this thing. Apparently that thing's supposed to run all the time, and this thing is capable of performing 2 functions at once. So you could punch holes on the front end, and somebody else could be shearing bar or angles on the back end, or coping stuff. What I have done is I've succeeded now in getting it freeing everything up, and it is now poorly running. So in other words, everything works, but just not great, which is about probably how they decommissioned it after decades of service, decades and decades. The model number is Buffalo, it's the 1.5, so apparently it's somewhere between 65 and 73 tons, depending on whose paperwork you look at. Maybe model number, I don't know. Maybe flywheel weight, I don't know. But what I did last night, I think where I left it was I lubed everything up, and then this morning I kind of came through, hang on, I mixed up a bottle of cheap bulk nut buster or something, let's call it. It's just acetone and ATF, 50-50. You use that to kind of get it loose, and then once stuff starts moving, I add like another 25% of ATF, just so that the oil then stays in there. The acetone becomes a vehicle to kind of bust into the rust, and then it drips the ATF in afterwards, and then I just add more ATF and it all kind of follows it, and eventually the acetone drives out and leaves some sort of lubricant in there. So this front here, and I need to remind you guys too, when you're doing stuff like this, I mean, anything can come alive at any time until you get it all worked out, and even after that, stuff can just come alive. So I've got a foot pedal down here, and my next project, after I show you how this works, is I'm able to shut it off now. Before, I had everything kind of operating, but everything wouldn't stop, and it's really tough to shut off a mechanical machine in that condition, because it means it has to operate every function when it goes to start back up, and it's just too much for the engine or the motor. So I just got a linkage back on the back. The back was, the angle shear was just going non-stop, and now I have it to where it's working. It's actually working pretty good. So this function here is a notcher, and this is the punch, and so you can, so now the linkage is stuck and it's working about every other time, but what I can do is I can lift the pedal up and make it stop, or you can hold the pedal down. It's really supposed to kick out after you hit the pedal once. You know, you take the pedal off and it would stop on its own. Hang on a second. So I have a set of dies for it, and the stripper for the punch, 1/4-inch flat bar. Why is it not working? It must be kicking itself off of there. Well, in any case, I've got this feature. I had it cut in bar earlier. So we get that to stop, we close that up so nobody gets in there. There's 2 foot pedals for this neck station. One of them's there and the other one's here. So if you were shearing bar over here or angle, you could operate this one. They both go to the same place, but I've got it, let's see. You'll be able to see that close in there. Things I oiled was these, and they're working amazingly well now. That's to hold the inside of the angle so it doesn't jump when you're shearing it. So this one works really well. And then this one we have here. That's pretty good. I think it could be looser. This is for that flat shear down there. Probably just Googled. So the goal is of course to get everything working as well as it can. So as we go through things, there's so many little broken things and broken oil fittings and things like that. Oh, that's another thing. This is kind of a neat oiler here. Let me zoom in on it. So there's a valve here. This is full of oil. You fill that up, turn the valve on, and then the handle is spring loaded, but you pull it down once all the way, and then you let it go. And if you watch, it'll slowly let itself up, and it'll pump oil out to all the bearings everywhere that it's plumbed. And then if there's any broken fittings, which I know there's 3 for sure right now that I have to get little oil lines for, is once it's up, you can then just shut that back off. So you pump it, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 times a day, in the morning, and then after lunch maybe. But anyway, we got the front working. I did have that shear in the front working this morning. I'll just have to start investigating, but more importantly would be the trip function in there. So in any case, I can shut it off now without fear of not being able to restart it. So let's do that. As soon as that stops, I'm going to start it up again and see what it does. amazing all that happens off of what I think is a 3-horse motor. I'll have to read the tag, but pretty amazing. Old stuff. Yeah, I'm assuming this thing's probably like 1950s, 1960s, somewhere in there. 60s anyway. 55, 60, 65. Maybe I can track it down from the serial number. All right, I'm gonna shut it back off and clean up a few tools. All right, so here's what we have. The plan is, I want to make this thing punch holes. I did get it working, but I didn't get it working the way I want, and I'll show you what's going on, and I think by laying it out and explaining it to you guys will make it even more clear to me. This is, I guess we call it the die block, or the punch holder. There's two of these. I think you can see that this one here has more shoulder. They're the same threads. Would be the die holding collar. There's a 45-degree bevel in there. Most of these punches for this style have a 45-degree shoulder. This is a spacer to use this style punch. Spacer goes in there. Punch goes in there. One of these would be screwed into this plate. Well, anyway, it screws in there. This bolts up to the machine. When I got the machine home, these shims, when I just started taking it apart, these shims were in there to hold that with this larger one in there. So I took the shims out because what also came with the machine. So full disclosure, I only have a couple of these size punches that came with it. I don't have any of the dies that they go with. And I'll show you that part in a minute. So as it sits right now, that's not super handy. So it doesn't do me any good. But what I do have is a full set of a much smaller style. This would be more for a smaller Ironworker, but there's no reason it won't work in here. I have the small, I think these are 1 3/4 dies, and then this top is 1 1/4. I built so the die holder is 2.5 inches, and so whatever the die that these would go into would be 2.5 inches instead of 1 3/4. So what I did was I made this collar out of a piece of it was some sort of cast bushing. It's kind of tough, but anyway, these go in there a little tiny bit loose. A lot of times these will get stuck, so I made it a little loose. I wasn't. It bolts in. There's a hole here. The bolt pins it all together. That's fine. There is a little bit of slop in these holes where it bolts up to the machine, so that when you dial the machine in, when you set a new punch in a die, you have to make sure they line up. Otherwise, you'll break one or the other, and that's no good. So what I have, this is kind of a neat thing. This is an alternate nose piece. It's a quick release for this size die, and so that goes in. You can feel it click in. Look, you got all these balls here, and then this. I don't have a way to hold that, or do I? Well, in any case, you twist. It just needs loosened up more, but this twists like a 1/4 turn or a 1/2 turn, and it locks this into place. The problem is it increases the length. So when I was using it, as it was coming down, you can't change the stroke on the machine, but you can adjust the height through shims of where that is. And so when I was using it, what it was doing was it was coming down and hitting the stripper. And so when you punch a hole, the material goes in between the stripper and the die. Punch comes down, punches through it, and then when it comes back up, this keeps it from staying on the die, and it makes the die or the punch pull out. So the nose of this was contacting that and flexing it down. It was just not working real well. So I need to, this piece here was welded into the back of this plate. There was, about 1/3 of it was welded. So I just ground it out. I'm not worried about that cavity since it comes up tight onto the shoulder and that's what it's pressing on. And so I think what I can do is just swap this out for the thinner one, which will pick it up a little bit. And then at that point I can remount the thing to the machine without the spacers. And I'm gonna build a new stripper. This thing, pretty sure it's not original equipment. Parts of it might be. This part down here may be original, but it's been, I won't throw it away, I'll keep it, but I'd like to build one as a fresh start. And what I may do for simplicity is build it in such a fashion that as I get like a different material, you could kind of get away punching holes in 1/2 inch and 5/8 without moving the stripper up or down. But then if you go down to 1/4 or something, you're going to need definitely a thinner one. So I may build it so that all I have to do when I do thinner material is just screw in a shim to it pretty simply, which would also have a smaller stripper hole on it. So that's the plan for this morning, so that I can get it up and running. I'll at least get everything assembled, get it remounted, and start seeing if I can even use this stripper. Because one thing I could do is I could just weld a piece to this for today. So that's the plan. I'll start getting this stuff cleaned up and film what I can. I'm going to take a little bit of that off. Hang on, let me look at the press, see if there's a relief there. Hang on. Okay, there's no relief on the press, and this has a little camber in it. It may come up in contact, but the shoulder is hitting the plate, and I mean it'll contact, but it's not going to mushroom. That's not so bad. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. We got some, these are the bolts that came with that were in it to fit up to the spacers. I needed some short ones, so I found some. I want to run a tap in there, 7/16 12 point on that tap if it works. So one of the things that came in the bucket with this stuff was a 3 1/4 inch wrench, which is what I need for that. It was shop made. It was extra large. I think I'm going to make another one because I really can't find the one that came with it. and it was kind of clunky. So I think I want to make a little bit nicer one. So that'll be a project. That goes up in there, and then it's good. Okay. Back in with the punch or the die holder. This bolt here is a whole nother project. It's been forced into the die so much that the end of it is mushroomed out, and it won't back out. It'll only go in till it contacts the end of the threads there. So right now we're stuck with it. It's not perfect, but it'll work. Okay, put the die in. There's a slight depression around the edge of that die to catch that bolt, and then insert the punch. Start it down. And that's down and locked. And then we can cycle it. Let's get it fired up real quick. All right, I made it to town for the cart that I wanted. A hand truck for that. Okay, so before I start this thing up, I'm going to keep repeating it until I remember that I told you guys. Anytime you start up a piece of machinery that's a mechanical piece of machinery, as far as like mechanically driven, not just like not a hydraulic machine, but anything that utilizes a flywheel, they work because there's inertia in the flywheel that drives a gear that's separated by a clutch of some sort or a trip lever. And anytime you leave the machine and you can't see it, there's a chance that something could fall and hit a foot pedal or a foot lever or something that trips that clutch and engages the machine. So if you haven't watched it, there's a chance that somehow that's tripped, so that upon starting up, as the flywheel builds speed, it will then cycle the machine. So if that means that it's a blade coming down, that blade's coming down. If it means a punch is coming down, that punch is coming down. So always be careful with a mechanical piece of machinery. You can hear that load up. And then as soon as that thing comes to full speed, which it did there, the heavy start load comes off the phase converter and just sits there and runs. So now we're going. So nothing cycled, so we're good. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna test the punch feature. Going deep enough, so I think we're going to be okay. So as I come down, you can see it's missing the hole, and the punch is to the back of the die hole, so it means we got to make the punch come forward. So I got a brass hammer here. Okay, so that goes in there. So now we'll keep that from moving. That needs to get shoved over, I think. All right, now that I've restarted the alignment process half a dozen times. I can see that when I tighten it, it's wanting to work to the back again, so that tells me that maybe that die holder plate is bent a little bit. I may need to machine it or come up with a shim on one side of it. But that's working. It's definitely going deep enough. Alright, we'll try to see how this works now. What I want to do, I want to punch, I'll be punching 1/4 inch material, so I'm going to start at a 1/4 inch here. Get some Gucci structural stuff there. Looks like it's denting it, so it says my die base is too far below the surface, so I need to build that up. It's probably going to be like something about like that. Alright, we'll work on that because we can't have that. Not a bad hole. I think I got the perfect thing for that. I'll be right back. Alright, I had a couple of washers. This will work for the punches I'm using. So one is all I need, and then I'm contacting that, so I'm going to go cut that out. Cut the bottom of that hole out. I only took a shim out of that far side. That's looking better already. Not perfect. Let me get a little piece of plate. Out of that side. Just do it before I waste any more time. Hang on. Yeah, there's not a lot of deflection there at all. That's going to work for the job I got it for right now. Or that's going to work for the job today. What I've discovered is that I need to rework the linkage from there through the machine. It takes several rods to where it eventually shoves a plunger into the back side of the punch block. So that's always moving. And it's basically like a disengage, and it can also kick itself out. And so I've oiled it up internally there, that it's working well, not perfectly, but what I've done is, it looked like somewhere along the line somebody had installed a spring in between the foot pedal and that. There is a some sort of, can't see right here, but there's like a connecting rod there that is somewhat of a shock absorber. I don't know if it has a catch in it or it's part of the system. The spring is a little stiff, but it's going to work for now. I've got it wired so it doesn't come off. Without that spring, the punch stays engaged, and that's not a safe or effective condition right now. So it is working to a degree, and I'm going to clean up the mess I have going here. There was some guides that were bolted to the table here, so I'm going to replace those so I can use them to set up the jig for the first project. Alright, one more thing I want to do before I start using this is there's a guard here around the notcher. I want to make sure I lock it shut so I don't inadvertently put my hand there while I'm using it. That's 3/8 by at least 3. That's 3.5. It's not quite all the way to the inside. So we want to keep that closed until we need it. When I was digging for bolts, I found a stack of shims from something, but those will be handy to keep in the growing parts basket. I'm not going to bolt it down yet, because what I have to do is I'm going to shoot some angles, punch a hole at each end, and one in the middle, and I can flip it and do the other flange the same. But what I'll do is once I cut the pieces, I'll set up and weld an end stop here and here, so I can one there, something like that. Alright, let's get this thing fired up. build a roll case for this once we figure out roughly where it's going to go and how the case could best serve what we need. It looks like, well, we'll see. Probably something pretty simple that I can just set there that's maybe 6 or 8 feet long. I can set a few feet from there. We'll figure it out. I was shearing that angle iron, it was tough to run that pedal, and I realized when I came over here earlier that that pedal was sticking on the dunnage there. So I moved it and it's working a lot better. that chute back on. It's just putting everything into a can down there. Alright, I gotta build some foot extenders for this thing. Not really temporary. I think, so this thing's clearly supposed to be bolted to the floor. It doesn't have a huge stance for the amount of weight that's over the top of it. It's up higher than I'd like it now, sitting on this dunnage, which I broke moving it over there. So that's 2.5 inches. I'd like it a little lower. I don't want stuff sticking out too far on either side because I don't want to trip on it. I'm not worried about the other end, more about this end by the punch because you're kind of working kind of around this side. So what I've got is some 1 by 6 flat bar. I have a piece of 1.5 by 6, but I think this will be fine for what I want to do. And looking down this side, they've got the feet offset quite a bit. So I'm going to extend this side about 6 inches front and back, and then I'm going to stick that side out about 9 inches. And it'll actually work good because I can use it to build a little catch tray on the back there, out of the bar shear, the flat bar shear. Yeah, so we're going to do that. 27. All right, so we had 27 plus 6, 33 plus 9, 42. So we'll do 2 pieces, 42, and we'll lay out some holes. The sound the drill made was the swarth packing up against the plate, and it was bogging down. It was binding up. Okay, so that's a good, quick little project. I feel a lot better about working around that thing now. I did just have one thought as I was thinking through something I was going to say, which was I did have a thought about putting fork pockets on this to move it around, but I'm okay with this as at least an interim solution because I kind of think it's going to find a permanent home a little quicker than I thought. I thought about moving the saw back and improving my shorts rack storage for all the short pieces of steel, which is constantly a mess for me. I am going to improve the over the roll case saw rack or storage rack. I was thinking about moving the whole saw back, but I think now what I may do is just put the Ironworker just on the other side of that. I was going to move the saw back, put it in front of it, but I kind of feel like right now it'd be better just kind of where that big funnel thing is over there. So if that's the case, then there's not much more I have to do with it because it's already kind of moved into position. It's fairly close. The one thing I did neglect to do, which I can do in another video or later on, is what I should have done was drilled extra holes in here to bolt it to the floor. It's not completely necessary, but it's not a bad idea either. So, but that's certainly easy enough to do later. It's not hard to move. I'll just pop them loose, drill more holes, put them back in one at a time. It'll be simple. Anyway, so that's that. At this point now, it's in a position where I can tinker on it without fear of anything. And I think my next move is probably going to be towards, I want to keep it usable while I work on it. And so the next move will be take it back to Beauty Base 0, which would be, there's a lot of little weldments that have been used for different things over time, whether they were to correct negligent maintenance or something like that. It's just how these things happen. They were spring holders and little guard holders and little jig holders, and I mostly just want to get rid of all of them so that as I take pieces off, maybe I can clean it up and paint it behind what I'm working on. So I've got that one there. I did take the those are heavy, those are solid, 2-inch solid or 1 7/8 solid. I did take those off. I'm probably going to salvage the plates off of them because somebody took the time to fit those and drill them. I did like having them there, but I don't like having them there all the time. So I think probably what I'll do is make some sort of socket system, put the plates back on, cut the bar off, put the plates on, put some sort of socket on there that I can fit a stop in between the two. So, you know, something I could transfer from this one to this one, kind of on a receiver type hitch sort of setup. So that I can have a stop for the angle and move the thing over, and then I'll have two pieces sticking out the back. I can use it, move it over and use it on the bar shear. Yeah, little by little, we'll just keep working on it. Okay, I had a couple spare minutes this morning. I've been cutting off some the old adder brackets on this thing, little things that have been added to it over the years. Most of them I knocked off of there with a hammer. One of them I had to cut off. And then I have, this thing was dirty, but I just found it recently. I've got a little, let me see if I can point it out, a little broken bolt right there. And that piece should be able to slide up and down. Not real easy, but it should be able to move to adjust for different thicknesses or different shapes, or to allow you to clamp down angle when you want to shear it at a 45. So I'm going to pull that out, so that's working. I've got a little easy out. I'm going to try to center punch it and drill it real quick. Oh, too much. All right, we'll go back in with a little more anchor lube. It's pretty close to center. I just grabbed a bit. I didn't size it to re-tap the hole because I don't know how it's going to come out, so I'm just going to drill it. And we'll worry about it later. There's going to be a drill strike in this. I'm not too proud about that, but I'm also not too worried about it. I bet you I'm in there now that the curl started. Yeah. Get some gloves. I can drill that out a little bit. Hang on. The side you're hitting. It's there, but it's not quite there. So look that way. And go that way. Probably. It is nice. That's hitting that screw in there. It doesn't need to ever go up that high. It's going to spend most of its time somewhere in there. All right, so one of the next things I'm going to do for this is I'm starting to get a little bit wider of an assortment of wrenches to work on this thing needed that I'd like. So I need to come up with probably some little hanger there, some pins or dowels or something to hang some wrenches on. That's 9/16. There's a lot of bigger stuff, and I'm going to try as I go. I'm going to try to more standardize some of them. I mean, there's some, there's a lot of 3/4 bolts on here, and some of the nuts are heavy nuts, which is, I don't know, 1/8 to 3/16 bigger wrench size. Some of you'll know there's probably a sliding scale for them, and there's regulars. So I'm going to try to get it all slowly dialed in here. Okay, that was one win. Hang on. All right, I'm back for half a second. This is that original drill strike, but this was a shoulder. What would that be called? Oh, flange screw or flange bolt. I just tightened that up and it scarred that real quick. This thing will get destroyed extremely fast if I don't go round that over. I'll probably just round it over. I could get fancy, put a little brass dot in there, but I think this will be fine. Scarred that just on the first tightening. Just cut it like glass. I got the wrong size bolt. That's odd. Stand by. Okay, I redid that with 1/2-13. I got a stainless bolt because it's a little softer. This plate needs to move back and forth to adjust square to the blade, and so this would have to move again, but I'll just tighten it up there for now. There it is. It's a little easy on that. Snug that up a little bit. Fine. Okay. We're good.